I talked to the scholarship recipients, asking them about the experience and perspective. So the objectives of this study explore the scholarship, the students, which are the scholarship recipients, their perception and personal experience toward Taiwan while studying in Taiwan, and also how this scholarship brings the influence or attraction to the recipients. Two major research questions: what are the perception and experiences of the scholarship students towards Taiwan? The second one is how do they perceive their identity and connection with Taiwan. This is a 2-year project funded by the Ministry of Science and Technology in Taiwan. So what I conducted 6 focus group interviews of 44 ICDF scholarship recipients from 20 countries, and from 11 from allied countries, 2 from friendly countries, and also 2 from terminated allied countries from Kiribati and Solomon Island. So the students, the informants are from 4 selected universities in Taiwan, 2 national, 2 private, from 4 different disciplines: business, education, medical science, and engineering. From 4 universities. So later on, when you see the data, I use UA, UB, UC, UD. So 2 national, 2 private, and from 4 disciplines, 1 in Northern Taiwan, Mid Taiwan, and 2 from Southern Taiwan. 2 of them are master degree, 1 is postgraduate degree, and 1 bachelor degree. These are the informants, the participants. 31 of them are from allied countries, 10 of them are from friendly countries, and then 3 of them are from terminated allied countries. The sample interview question, so I adopted Marshall and Rossman framework, meaning that perception is that attributes to experiences includes like those thoughts, feelings, beliefs, values, and assumption. So my question, if I post a question about experience in Taiwan, I would ask something like, how does studying and living in Taiwan help you understand Taiwan and people here, for example? About perception, are there any changes of your perception about Taiwan during your study? And like about identities, how would you describe your identity in relation to Taiwan? Something like this, and I go deeper. So in terms of literature review, because the time is limited, when you talk about diplomacy, usually it covers cultural diplomacy, public diplomacy, soft power, and knowledge diplomacy. But in this presentation, I will only confine very much in soft power and cultural diplomacy. Very early on, Joseph Nye coined the term soft power. He tried to explain that it's the power that the nation can exercise to other countries in a way that it gives attraction rather than the force, like economic or military. Those are hard power. But if you transmit the soft power, is more of about intangible resources such as culture, values, or the foreign policies. So it could be said like cultural diplomacy is a form of soft power. There are 2 major scholars who really look deeply into cultural diplomacy. One is Simon Mark. Simon Mark, he understands the cultural diplomacy as a deployment of the state's culture. So there is a role of the state's intervention in transmitting or exercising the culture. Okay, and he believes that cultural diplomacy is a subset of the public diplomacy. Milton Cummings, on the other hand, is more of the natural exchange of the ideas, information, values, or the belief systems, like the traditions. But he focuses rather on the goal, like to achieve the mutual understanding. Also, Ant did mention that if transmission of the culture becomes too instrumental, especially when the government is involved, the cultural diplomacy might be seen as a propaganda. So in terms of, in the context of international higher education could be seen as a vehicle for influencing soft power. Jane Knight has provided another alternative view about diplomacy. She calls it knowledge diplomacy. And her understanding is like the diplomacy that involves the universities should be mutually, it concerns the mutual interests and benefits and confines to the area of research and innovation. So from my data analysis, there are two major themes emerge from here. The first one is attraction and influence of cultural diplomacy. The other one is student as a nexus of cultural diplomacy. So let's look at the first one. What I posted here is the data, the raw data, and a short description of it. When I asked the students about what in Taiwan that attracts you, most of them would say safety. Because students, they perceive, they have the judgment about the experience here based on their prior experience in their home country. So the student from Honduras said, like, Taiwan gives us an opportunity to feel safe, and we don't have that in our country. Now the Belize also said, I feel extremely safe here. I don't feel like at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, I walk on the streets, I don't feel any threatened. Yeah, and from students from Palau said, like, okay, in my country, they don't necessarily have gun, but people can steal from you or can mock you. It's so safe in here. While students from St. Vincent describe about her access to transportation, healthcare, and technology in Taiwan, but they choose to emphasize that safety is number one. Okay. And some students also talk about the exclusivity of the scholarship program itself, which is the full coverage. You can say, like, this student from Honduras talked about, no, it covers everything. I don't need to worry about it. I just have to study. It covers housing, stipend, and monthly stipend, fees, health insurance, airfare, everything. Okay, and this student from Belize talked about her honor as a representative of her country in Taiwan, and she described, like, ICDF scholarship is far more exclusive than means other scholarship from Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And she also talked about there's an exclusive program manager who will take care of them. Okay, and also the student from Indonesia, she mentioned about she admitted actually Taiwan is not her first choice, no, but she came over really because of the fully funded scholarship. While I talk to the students, I also explore how much Taiwanese, like, understanding of the Taiwanese about their allies country. Unfortunately, many students told me that the Taiwanese people do not really understand about the allied countries. And this concerns public, one-way public diplomacy, but I don't touch upon that at this stage because the time limitation. So the students said, like, very minimal. So when this is from Belize, she said, when I told them, like, I'm from Belize, they said, like, oh, you are from Bolivia, from Belgium, and so on. And then this student, she's Black, so she said, like, when I walked, they just pulled my hair, they took a picture of us and videotape or even followed us around. So she said, there's a nice part of the people here, but also there's the other side. Okay, so the second emerging themes that I had here is about students as a nexus of cultural diplomacy. So all of them, 44 participants, no one felt a sense of propaganda. I think this is a very successful part of this diplomacy. One student even was very particular. He mentioned about his experience that when he took the course called Research on Taiwan Culture and Education. And he said, like, at first I thought that it's going to be a kind of indoctrination before coming to Taiwan. But he said that even when he took the course, he felt like even like the talk they discussed about the February 28th, which is a Peace Memorial Day. It was the time that thousands of civilians were killed. And he said, like, oh, it obviously it's neither the indoctrination or propaganda. No, they posted a very neutral view of it. And he said, like, it's not about promotion of Taiwan. They are showing Taiwan objectively. And that is very positive to me. And by the way, I'm not Taiwanese, okay? I'm originally from Thailand. I'm Chinese in Thailand. So I think I am in a neutral position to look into this diplomacy. So the students, all of the students, but one Thai student, she perceived herself as this like a student seeking a degree abroad. The rest of them, they see it more or less as a cultural diplomacy or cultural ambassadors or the representative of their country. So this is an example that from Belize, she said like being an ambassador to your country is the role that I've taken since I decided to come here. The other one from Honduras talked about during the orientation time, the former foreign minister already assigned them the mission to complete, to come here as an ambassador. So when talking about their future plan, most of the students, they plan to return home or pursue a subsequent degree, but before returning to their home country. This student from Mexico, which is a friendly country, she said like she feels committed to return to be a bridge with her university. And the other one in Colombia talked about studying in higher education is luxurious in Colombia. And he described about the brain drain problem in his country. And he said he doesn't want to be one of them. So he would go back to contribute. Okay, so he wants to improve the system in Colombia. And however, the students in hard science, like those from engineering, also medical science, they did post some concerns about unemployment, overqualification, or oversupply of medical physicians at home. Like this is the students from Eswatini, Swazi. So Swazi student, she said like when we return, there'll be no job for us. The other one from Honduras talked about the unmatch of the main manufacturing industry, which is textile in Honduras, but her qualification as the mechanical engineer. So she said she would be overqualified and underpaid. So another student from a medical science, she mentioned about the program in her country is 8 years, but after 8 years, in short, she would become, after 8 years, she would be kind of the specialist. But the current program that she is taking is the postgraduate program. So after she finishes it, she will become only GP. So she said she has a concern, like there are more than 500 unemployed general GP, like a GP in her country. So now I'm entering into the discussion. Obviously, this study serves as an empirical evidence to understand the subtle meaning and the impact of diplomacy, and also attractions far outweigh influences. But I still think that Taiwanese can find a way to understand the allied country better. So in conclusion, there is a strong personal connection and cultural identities of the students while they live in Taiwan, and they have the positive impression about Taiwan. While higher education institutions serve as a platform for knowledge sharing, students' role as a nexus of cultural diplomacy is salient. So it is evident that international higher education can be utilized to promote peace and friendly relations between countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was Professor Lin on extending diplomacy via higher education perceptions and experiences of scholarship recipients in Taiwan.
Yeah.
We want to thank you sincerely. We can take some few questions if there are any. Are there some questions to address to Professor Lin? Gentlemen, any questions?
Yes, please.
Can I ask a question?
Definitely.
I am part of the organizer for this event. So, okay, actually it's quite interesting about the topic of knowledge diplomacy, we call it in higher education perspective. So I just want to know, in the Taiwan government context, what kind of the indicator that they use to measure the successful or impact of this program in terms of the tangible and also in terms of the intangible value that derive from this program? So, yeah.
From my thank you for the question. As I mentioned, like this program started since 1998, and it's only one part of the big fund that Taiwanese government helped the allied countries in terms of the investment or the training in their own countries. And but for this part is about education part. So every year from my document analysis, every year ICDF will give a report. In the report, they will share about how many projects have been completed and how much funding and what is the outcome of it. But for higher education, so far, no one has really done the research to look into what is the successful of this project. And this is why I got a grant of about 1.6 million to do this project for 4 levels. I started at the student level, so until in the end, the last level is policy analysis. So by then, I'm very expecting that I will see and I will give the feedback to the government about what has been achieved and what kind of improvement could be made. I hope I can make this contribution. So far at the student level, I think they have been very successful. Now, a little tiny thing, like for example, it's more of the one-way public diplomacy or those things. But in general, the reception or the perception of the students about their living in Taiwan and their commitment to carry on their experience, a positive experience here back home is very positive. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Well, if there is no more question, we can go to the second presenter, Dr. Garima Malik, who will be presenting on governance of online and distance education in Indian higher education. Is Dr. Garima ready? Dr. Malik?
Yes, yes, yes.
Please go ahead.
Yes. Thank you, Professor Ashafa. So today, let me share my screen. I hope it's visible. Can you see the screen? Okay. So today my presentation is on the governance of online and distance education in Indian higher education. And I will be talking about part of an international project that was done between the NIPA, where I'm a faculty, and the UNESCO International Institute for Education Planning, Paris. So this was part of a joint project on flexible learning pathways. But this is a subset of that project. So it's the whole project was on flexible learning pathways, but I'm looking at just the online and distance education. So in the terms of the higher education context, India has the second largest higher education system in the world. And we have moved from a stage of elitism to a stage of massification. Previously, it was a very elite kind of a higher education system. Now it's more massified. And there's a large and growing role of the private sector. So though the initial years were guided by more of a public sector development, public sector led growth, now it is more of the private sector. So, so these are the number of universities we have: 1043 universities, 42,000 colleges. It's a very large and complex higher education system in that sense. And, 38.5 million students, and it's growing in large in numbers, and a GR of 27.1. So if you see that in terms of the central universities, we have central universities which are funded by the center, state universities, deemed to be universities and institutions of national importance, and private universities and colleges. And you can see the growth. If you see the growth in terms of numbers, you will see the maximum growth in terms of the private universities. And this is again just a graphical representation of the same data. So talking about the evolution of distance education and technology in distance education, distance learning in India for higher education was initiated in the form of correspondence courses in 1962, and Delhi University started it. But the establishment of the Open University in United Kingdom encouraged India, and the first Open University was in fact a state Open University. And the next Open University started through an act of parliament was the Indira Gandhi National Open University. So India has 15 open universities and over 220 dual mode institutions offering distance education programs. And distance education went through a major change after the advent of radio, arrival of television, computers, and the internet. So if you see the evolution of online and distance education in national policies, you can see that the National Policy on Education 1968 stressed on part-time and correspondence courses. And then it was in 1986, it stressed on the open university system with IGNOU, which had been created. And the National Policy on Education 1986 modified had a major thrust on adult education, lifelong learning, open and distance learning. The policy also had a major focus on improving access for equity groups. And finally, the most recent national policy we have on Education 2020 has been important for promoting the development of open and distance learning programs and online courses. It's a major step in advancing flexible learning pathways in Indian higher education with liberal education, autonomous multidisciplinary institutions, credit transfers, and multiple entry and exit options. So if you look at the student enrollment in distance education, we can see that there is a rapid rise in the distance mode as compared to the conventional mode, though the conventional mode is also increasing, but the distance mode is increasing at a much faster rate. And as enrollment in distance education has grown rapidly since the 1980s, and in 1991, the Distance Education Council was established, and it was then replaced by the Distance Education Bureau attached to the University Grants Commission. And if you look at the comparative enrollment trend of Indira Gandhi National Open University in terms of social category and area of learning, we can see that they have played an important role in promoting equity in access to higher education and increased enrollment numbers, particularly for scheduled castes and other backward castes. And the same is true for enrollment in rural areas. However, in tribal areas, they still need more access to distance learning opportunities. So in terms of the regulatory framework, this is the regulatory framework that is there at the national level. And we have the University Grants Commission, we have the Distance Education Bureau, which looks at the online and distance education. And then we have the overall regulation, which is the policy making and the accreditation. In terms of the accreditation, what we found when we did the research is that the National Assessment and Accreditation Council accredits and gives a score out of 4 for all the universities. So if you have 3.26, then you can run distance learning programs and online programs without actually going through UGC approval, University Grants Commission approval. But if you have between 3.01 and 3.26, after the pandemic started, the government has increased the fold within which more institutions can be actually coming in and offering programs, but they need prior approval. So the open universities in India, we have types of open universities. We have the central open universities, then we have the state open universities, and then we have the state private open universities. So these are the different open universities which have been established in India. So, you can see that India, we have the central system, the state system, and then also the private system. And as far as the financing of open universities is concerned, it's very interesting what we found in the research that we did for the open universities is that open universities have been very successful in mobilizing funds from non-governmental sources, that is student fees and receipts from publications. So you can see that in the open universities, the major difference between a normal university, a conventional university, and an open university is that they have much more coming in from the student fees. So that is partly because the enrollment has been increasing and partly also because of the increase in student fees. And this is in terms of the expenditure patterns. We have the expenditure patterns. Most of the expenditure is the other category, which is actually the maintenance and improvement in terms of the development of infrastructure and development of the online IT and IT support and other patterns of funding of state open universities. And these are the major sources of income of a conventional universities. For conventional universities, most of the funding actually comes from the central government or the state government. That's what we found. That was found in one of the studies which was done on conventional universities. But when we looked at open universities, we found that in fact, most of the funding comes from the student fees as compared to coming in from the central government and the state government. And this is the equity and access in open universities in terms of the equity and access. And the governance structure of now coming to the governance part, the governance structure of IGNOU, a Central Open University, this is the governance structure where you have the Board of Management, you have the Vice Chancellor, Academic Council, and the Research Council. So it is set up similarly to a normal university. It is not that they have more autonomy than a typical open university, but if you see that a central university is very different from a state university, that's what we found in the subsequent research. So this is the governance structure of a state open university, which is a little different in terms of we have to go a little deeper into the composition, but otherwise it is set up a little differently from the typical central open university. So this is the empirical evidence. The reason I didn't present the research questions is because actually, this is a research on flexible learning pathways. This was a research on flexible learning pathways in higher education in India. It's part of an 8-country multi-country project of the UNESCO IIEP Paris. But in fact, this is the part of that research, which is on online and distance education, which we went deeper into subsequently. So these are the data templates. We looked at the secondary research of policy documents. We also looked at the interviews with the Ministry of Human Resource Development and University Grants Commission, the All India Council for Technical Education, the National Assessment and Accreditation Council, and also looked at the employers. That is, what are the employment aspects of these students who come out from open universities and universities which run distance education programs. So 6 interviews were conducted. 6 interviews, there were 2 case study universities. In fact, at that stage, we didn't, since we were not going deeper into the open and we were looking at the overall flexible learning pathways, we selected a technical institute, which is a premier institute in India, which is the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. And we selected Bharatyar University, which has a school of distance learning. It's not an open university, but it has a school of distance learning. So it's part of these dual mode institutions, which has the distance learning programs, but in fact is not an open university as such. So its interviews were conducted in December 2019 and 2020, and focus group discussions were also conducted online and also, well, online because of the pandemic. Some of them had to be conducted online in May 2020. And it was conducted with the students, alumni, and students from the School of Distance Learning in February 2020. So, in fact, looking at the empirical evidence of at the national and the institutional level, what we found is that, so I'll just talk a little bit about the online part. The SWAYAM is the Study Webs of Active Learning for Young Aspiring Minds, is an Indian MOOCs platform launched by the Ministry of Education. Institutions could previously allow up to 20% of the total courses in a semester through the online learning courses provided through the SWAYAM platform. However, in order to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, the percentage has been increased to 40%. So now you can take 40% courses from the online platform. And now the new education policy 2020 talks about the academic bank of credit. So you can actually store these credits, take credits from a different university, and then take the degree from a different university. And then the courses hosted on SWAYAM are in 4 quadrants. They are a video lecture, specially prepared reading material that can be downloaded or printed, self-assessment tests through tests and quizzes, and an online discussion forum for clearing the doubts. So if you see a recent news item which came on the SWAYAM courses, students can now, the reason I had to take some newspaper articles is because this is somewhat new, in the sense that not just, that students can get 40% of university credits from e-courses, and the credit transfer from SWAYAM courses, 149 universities are accepting credits of these courses, but the maximum are the private universities. So previously, the open system, the open and distance learning system was more of a publicly led system. And now slowly the private sector is coming in and getting interested in actually, running these courses. So enablers and challenges in online and distance learning. If we look at the enablers and challenges we found in the study, we found that in the enablers for the implementation of online and distance learning for policy framework and regulation, that if you have better regulation, you can have better online and distance learning. Funding provision, so the funding provision is quite adequate for online and distance learning programs. Graded autonomy. So like I mentioned, the NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council grades out of 4 points. And the higher the grade that you get in terms of the accreditation, the better you are graded in terms of the more autonomy that you get. So autonomy is something that you have to earn. It's not something that accreditation of online and distance learning programs, leadership and management, reachability of online and distance learning programs in terms of bridging the digital divide, flexibility in learning. Challenges for online and distance learning programs, which we found during the study, was that there is over-regulation of less autonomous higher education institutions, restriction of distance learning centers beyond higher education institutions jurisdiction, administrative fragmentation, lack of adequate infrastructure and proper training of faculty. The language was also an issue in terms of ODL programs, and perception of ODL as of lower quality. That is, people perceive that, if you're coming out to an open distance learning program, it is somewhat seen as a lower quality. So recommendations for enhancing online and distance learning and online education, training of faculty, enhancing the reachability of ODL and online programs, that is bridging the digital divide, flexibility in admission in terms of recognition of prior learning, cost reduction. There can be a cost reduction in terms of providing these programs since there is less faculty needed, but the training of faculty has to be better. And the language of ODL and online programs is also very important. So I'll just talk a little bit about the governance. I think in the interest of time, I'll just skip a few things, but I'll just talk about the state, market, and the higher education institutions in terms of the governance of higher education of ODL and online institutions. So we are moving from a situation where we had the state controlled mediated through the market and now to higher education institutions. So this is from the overall governance point of view. And some of the issues are how much freedom institutions have to run their own affairs, the extent to which they rely on government funding or can draw from other sources, the strengthening of the governance of the institutions, and new roles for leaders. So some of the parameters of good governance are in terms of what the World Bank and other organizations say is participation, transparency, responsiveness, effectiveness and efficiency, autonomy, accountability, and strategic vision. So universities should be autonomous, they should be entrepreneurial and accountable. Significance governance trend is the widening of institutional autonomy in terms of and block grants, strategic plans, academic freedom, and integration of institutional autonomy. And these are definitions, so I'll just go over these. Accountability includes moving towards more output and outcome-based measures from being input-based. So the national policy talks a lot about that accountability is meaningful only when higher education institutions are empowered to operate in an autonomous way. Performance evaluation, performance-based contracts, performance-based funding, competitive funding, external quality assurance, and internal quality assurance processes are the different accountability measures. So coming finally to the future priorities, the challenges in governance are not only concerned with transforming manual systems into ICT, it also involves deepening work culture along with ensuring responsiveness towards marginalized students and facilitating a learning environment. Improving institutional governance by ensuring instant student support services and grievance redressal mechanisms. The new education policy 2020 envisages gross enrollment ratio will be raised to a planned 50% by 2035. And we will have a national higher education qualification framework with 4 verticals: the General Education Council, the National Higher Education Regulatory Authority, and the National Accreditation Council, and the professional the council, which will look at different kinds of professional organizations. So the National Higher Education Qualification Framework shall allow flexibility and a system of credit transfer. So in India, we are going through where we are coming out with a national system of credit transfer. And an emphasis will be placed on ensuring lifelong learning by strengthening pathways to learning involving formal and non-formal education modes, including ODL and smartphone apps. and a framework of accreditation of ODL and a framework for quality of ODL that will be recommendatory for all higher education institutions. Universities will offer PhD and master's program in 4 areas such as machine learning, as well as multidisciplinary fields and professional areas like healthcare, agriculture, and law. These are some of the publications that we have and some of the publications that I refer to on governance and management. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Malik. Is there any question for Dr. Malik?
Yes, Dr. Malik, I have one question. This
Yes.
is just out of my curiosity. Like
Sure.
you mentioned about obviously the growth for online and distance learning is really high, like more than 4 million in 2019 and 20. I wonder how does the government cope with the equity in terms of the development of the infrastructure and to reach out to the outside, like the suburb or the rural area, to ensure that they also have the opportunities to be part of this online distance learning?
Okay, thank you, Professor. That's a very good question. Actually, in terms of the equity dimension, there are 2 kinds of things. One is the social equity, one is the regional equity. Social equity is in terms of having more of socially disadvantaged groups entering, and also regional equity in terms of taking the colleges to rural areas or taking the online programs so that they can be accessed by people living in rural and disadvantaged areas. So you're absolutely right. So in the new education policy 2020, they talk a lot about the concentration that, universities should not be just concentrated in urban areas. So there is a plan for, expanding and having more colleges in disadvantaged areas, and so that, there is more development of those areas. And in terms of the increasing the social groups representation in higher education, there is also, they are going to encourage that, more and more people are encouraged to come to higher education and try to expand and also try to build the infrastructure. And, there are a lot of issues of electricity and networks, internet networks in the rural areas. So that is something that they're also planning to build. So there is a lot in the new education policy 2020, which talks a lot about all these issues which have to be, addressed in a timely manner.
Right. Indeed, on one hand, distance learning can really help the people to access education, but on the other hand, it's ironic in a way that the infrastructure
creates a digital divide.
Yeah,
it almost exacerbates the inequality that already exists in India. You're absolutely right. So we have to be very careful about that and try to, overcome that and make sure that it's not just the people in the urban and the well-to-do people or well-to-do students who are being able to access systems.
Yeah.
Thank
you for your response.
Thank you very much. Let me also ask 1 or 2 questions.
Sure.
Regarding the accreditation process. So what are the accreditation framework conducted for this amount of education? And then what role do employers of these graduates of this mode of education in the accreditation process? Like we in Nigeria, for example, employers being involved in assessing or giving a report on the performance of graduates. So how is it done in India?
Okay, thank you, Professor Ashafa, for the question. Again, very insightful questions. As far as the accreditation process is concerned, it's predominantly done by the National Assessment and Accreditation Council in India, and it is done by they had a system of peer, visits by the accreditation team, as well as the which is now changed somewhat. They have now tried to make it more and more comprehensive in nature. So as you get a score out of 4. That is what the system has been so far. So out of 4, you get a score of, say, if you have a score of 3.26 and above, you can start an online program or a distance education program without getting prior approval from the UGC, that is the University Grants Commission. But if you get a score of 3.01 to 3.02 and below, then you have to get prior approval from the 3.01 to 3.26. You have to get prior approval from the University Grants Commission to start an online and distance education program. So, and they have a manual for open universities where they actually assess them on the basis of the different criteria which is there for open universities as compared to conventional universities. But what is missing is exactly what you said about Nigeria, that we don't have employers organizations coming in and actually giving the. So we had some meetings, we had some interviews with the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. And in fact, they said that they would like better academia industry linkages and more of employers trying to tell what is their requirement in terms of, what do they want out of the graduate attributes. So that is a big gap we have right now in terms of employment and employability of these graduates for coming out from online and distance education programs, that in fact, they don't always, they are perceived by employers as being somewhat different and from the general education programs or the conventional universities. So that is something which has to be addressed, very, very, very important.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
for
for the
any
question.
Any further questions? Dr. Malik has demonstrated a complete grip of the subject matter. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So we can go to the next presenter, which is also India, with the title Students' Perception About the Operational Processes at a Private Indian University. We have Jasmeet, Kaur.
Ms. Jasmeet Kaur.
Kaur, okay. Yeah. And Ratinga Kaur.
Yes, and Dr. Ratinder.
Thank you. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your introduction, Professor Ashafa. I'll share my screen first of all. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes.
Thank you. A very good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all here today. Though because of COVID, we have missed a golden opportunity to meet and share our views in person. However, we will utilize this virtual session to gain the knowledge. Above all, we have missed a chance to enjoy the hospitality being offered by Global Higher Education Forum during this conference. Hello, friends. I am Ms. Jasmeet Kaur. For everyone's ease, you can call me Jas. I am a research scholar from Punjabi University, Patiala, and also working as an assistant professor in a local private college. My topic for today is students' perception about operational processes at private Indian University. This is Dr. Ratinder Kaur and Ms. Jasmeet Kaur, both are the authors for this one. However, the presentation is being conducted by myself, that's Jasmeet Kaur. First of all, who are the stakeholders in the higher education institutions? In the education terms, stakeholders typically refer to anyone who is interested into the welfare and success of the school or the higher institutions organizations. It could be administrators, teachers, staff members, students, family, communities, and elected officials, or anybody else who have their best interest at the heart to cater to the well-being and to the knowledge of the students of that organization. So now, why I have chosen particularly students? As per various studies and my perception, students are the most important stakeholders. Reason being, the students are the most important stakeholders on the campus. First off, there would be no college or university without them. If there were no students, whom are the higher education institution gonna serve to? They are the ones who actually pay money for the school and the studies. Without their fees, no revenue can be generated in colleges, and they are the primary customers in that manner. Now, next, what is perception? Perception is the process of acquiring and interpreting selection and organization of the sensory information. In simple words, when we look at something, what do we perceive? What is the first thought that comes to our mind before using and after using? So if there is a difference between what we perceived at a first glance and what we observed or what we experienced while utilizing that particular product or service, is called the perception gap. So customer perception is important to understand what they expect and what they are actually delivered in this time period. Now, does perception matters? Of course. If our customers are happy, we are gonna have a chain of satisfied customers. In higher education, here time and again I'll be referring customers to the students. So if we have a set of students who are satisfied, they are gonna spread a good word about the higher education institution, which will get us more students, so we can have a more input in the upcoming in the upcoming years. Sorry. So here is the number of higher education institutions in India. As already Dr. Malik has told, that in India, higher education institutions are second in the world. We have around 1,043 universities, 42,343 colleges, and many stand-alone institutions as per the report of ISHES 2020. Now, the private sector has a great input into this higher education sector. We have approximately 408 universities which are privately managed. The remaining are public. So approximately 39% of the input of this higher education sector in India is into the private hands. So to reach out into the backward areas or into the semi-urban areas, private institutions are playing a great role. Satisfaction model defines that the institution to be, for any institution to be successful, we need to satisfy our stakeholders, be it students, parents, staff, alumni, anybody. And above all, if the students are satisfied, if we deliver them the quality services, we are gonna earn good reputation in the society. Now, what are the operational processes? Any university who have to operate on daily basis carry out a small set of activities which deliver the quality of education or products to the students and to the staff members. So first of all, I have divided, the processes are divided into three categories: the operational processes, which are also known as primary processes. So generally, these are carried out by the staff members to deliver the product to the customer. Generally, activities are led by, to generate the revenue of the organization. Next is the supporting processes. These are which do not have direct input into the particular set of activity, but however, they are required to carry out the activities in the routine manner. For example, any kind of safety precautions to be taken, or hiring processes that are being carried out to fill the vacancies in the organization. So that all are the supporting activities. Management processes are the strategic or the planning processes which are in channelization for monitoring and controlling the routine activities of the university. This is the pictorial view of the different type of activities. As we can see here, that operational activities show that from figure 1 to 2, 3, and 4, step by step, anything is being carried out. The management processes is looking into each and every process. The first process, second, third, and so on, all are being viewed by the management processes. And the supporting processes are in the outer cover because they are looking into each and every stuff. Conceptual framework of my study, that library facilities have a positive impact on the student satisfaction. I've taken the core activities of the university which have direct impact on the satisfaction of any student. So these all have been conceptual framework has been established with the help of previous studies which are being available through the review of literature. So library studies have a positive impact on student satisfaction. Campus placement, that means the firms hiring students from the campus itself has a positive impact on student satisfaction. The administrative services, that is the day-to-day services, have a positive impact on student satisfaction. Next, academics, that is the routine educational activities, have a positive impact on student satisfaction. Hostel facilities, in some other terms, it's also called the accommodation facilities. The food facilities available on the campus of the higher education institution have a positive impact on student. And lastly, the admission processes, the way through which a student can get inside the academic institution, it have a positive impact on student satisfaction. This is the pictorial view that how each and every activity, library, placement, administrative services, academic, hostel, and admission are related to student satisfaction here. The research methodology used here was that I targeted the final year degree and graduation students for answering my technique by the snowball sampling, as suggested by Tedley and U 2007. The sample size that I have used is 200, which was more than enough to carry out the kind of study or the kind of research I was undertaking. As per G star power, only 176 students were required. So I had more than the requirement of the students. On carrying out my research work, I firstly have gone through the conversion validity of the questionnaire or the responses that were being carried. All the AVE values were found above the record which is required as suggested by Hare et al. All the values should be above the score of 0.05. Here we can see the Cronbach alpha values, composite reliability, and average variance extracted AVE values of all these 6 processes that I have considered for my study: academics, admission, hostel, library, and all. So they all are in green, which indicates that all the values are above the accepted limitations. I have forgot to mention here that I have used the software Smart PLS 3 to carry out all the research work over here. Next is discriminant validity. It is used to ensure that one construct is different from the other construct. So the statements taken to measure the student's perception for one construct is different from that of the another. For this category, Fortner and Lacker criteria from 1981 is used to establish the discriminant validity. According to this, the AVE of one construct has to be greater than the MSV values of the other construct. We can see in the diagonal forms that academics has a link of 0.722 with itself, whereas all the other values with the admission, admin, and hostel, library, and satisfaction areas is below of that of itself with academics. Similarly, for the admin, we have 0.87 values, and all other values are smaller than this. So hence we have established discriminant validity as well. Now, this is the final output of the Smart PLS, which relates that how much we have been able to grasp or how much we have been able to cover with this construct. So over here, right here is the library services, which contribute 0.55 over here. These are the AVE values within the blue circles. And these are the number of statements that I have taken to cover the library statements. Similarly, for all other constructs over here, collectively, all these 6 type of processes that I have covered, they contribute 0.75 or 75% of the services or the perception of the student have been collected and analyzed over here. The path coefficients are the one which carries out the hypothesis testing. When I started this presentation, I hypothesized that academics have a positive impact, admin cells has. So these results of the Smart PLS shows that all other processes had been supported by my analysis work other than the admin, which was not supported because of the not standard values being achieved over here. So 5 out of the 5 constructs which were the 5 hypotheses which were framed have been supported, and one hypothesis, that is the administrative services, do not have positive impact on student satisfaction as per my research. To ensure the readability of my thesis, of this particular study, R square values and Q square values have been calculated. Let me make it very clear that R square value is the in the structure model shows the predictive accuracy of the model which I have developed. So if these values are between, if these values are between below 0.15, the effect is very small. If it is below 0.35, the effect is medium. And if the effect size is larger than 0.35, that means the predictive value of my model is having a large value on the future outcomes. So similarly, the Q square values is being calculated by blindfolding, and it leads to the predictive relevance. The results over here, R square value is 0.46, so which has a large impact, and Q square value is 0.28, which has medium effect size. So overall, the effect size of my studies over here is medium. However, no study exists without the limitations and perspectives for the future research. Due to time limitations, I could only collect information from the final year students. So the perception of other students also matter to improve the services being provided by higher education institutions in India. So we need to carry out the longitudinal studies involving opinion of the students before starting the course and after finishing the course. So this can be carried out in future to get a better information, as well as the perception of other stakeholders, the major stakeholders of staff, the administrative staff and the academic staff members, along with the management authorities, can give into a great interpretation of the present situation and will be helpful to cover any kind of perception gaps that exist. So this will be more helpful to provide the information and to frame the policies for upcoming academic sessions. Thank you. Any questions from the audience or any comments and suggestions are most welcome.
Thank you very much, Jas, for that wonderful presentation. So let's go for question and answers. Is there any question for Jas?
Any comments, any suggestions are most welcome. Looking forward for the expert views.
Ms. Jasmeet, if I can just ask a question.
Yes,
this is a very interesting presentation. I was just wondering that, you talked about what happens at a private university, but would an extension of this could be also comparing it with a public university and understanding what are the difference between the processes there and a private university, and in public, central and state universities, because, processes are quite different in central and state universities. So that would be a good extension of this in case you are, wanting to go further with this.
Thank you for your suggestion, ma'am. This was just the research paper that I have written. As I've already mentioned, I'm a research scholar, and my thesis is upon the comparison of public and private universities' operational processes. So this was just a part of it that I have presented in this conference.
Okay, so that would be also very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you. But let me ask this. What is the level of university, private university autonomy in India compared to public universities?
Sorry, Dr. Ashafa, it was a disrupted one. Can you please repeat the question?
Yeah, I was saying the level of university autonomy, private university autonomy compared to the public universities.
Okay. Public universities and private universities in India have different autonomies. As far as private universities are concerned, only few handful of people are being responsible for their routine activities. So they have a more quicker way to make the decisions and to react to the outer environment. As far as public universities are little less autonomous in comparison to the private universities, because we cannot keep the we cannot separate the role of higher authorities or the government authorities, because public universities are being funded by state and central governments, so they have important say into the decision making, so which makes them a little more complicated and less autonomous in my view.
Okay, so that's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr.
Yeah.
Ashka.
So if there are no questions for that, we go to the last presenter, who will be presenting on integrity education through communication on plagiarism. University weaving values into the social fabric. We have Dr. Ghazali and Abdullahi. Dr. Ghazali, are you ready?
Yeah,
You there?
thank you. Thank you, Professor Abdullahi, and thank you all audience. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, right, that's good. Okay, now I'm sharing my slide. Please let me know if they disappear or lag. All right, I would like to have your permission to not on my webcam because my presentation contains a load of animation. Is that okay with everyone?
Go ahead.
Okay. So good afternoon to all honorable listeners. Okay. So academic integrity take headlines in the last session. This presentation on integrity education through communication on plagiarism, university weaving values into the social fabric, is the joint work between me, Arniza Ghazali, and Dr. Asniwati Abdul Aziz. We are academics at the Division of Bioresource Technology, School of Industrial Technology, University of Science, Malaysia. So in this presentation, I will attempt to locate integrity, plagiarism, and as well as value into the higher education equation before sharing the methodology, the outcome, and the conclusion of the work. So flashback to history, plagiarism is that Greek-infused Latin word for plagiarius, which means literary steal, or plagium, which means kidnapper, both of which are objectionable. It involves dishonoring of knowledge because of fake claims of idea or absence of attribution of idea. In this regard, His Royal Highness Sultan Nazrin Shah regard plagiarism as an academic crime, and it has been part of university law, AUKU Act 605, Section 223. So plagiarism has been a disease worse pandemic than COVID-19, and it has been there since the 18th century. While some academics, until the Statute of Anne came into the scene and safeguard books and authors. While some academics feel that plagiarism is a small matter, cyber technology has actually not only allowed plagiarism to breed, but also capture plagiarism cases. And these are evident from high-profile cases like Education Minister of Germany, his family minister, and a few parliamentary figures, Austrian minister, ex-prime minister of I think that's Slovak, it should be Slovak. I will put this screen a little bit further. Okay. Also, his parliamentary members, Education Minister of Slovak, Rector of Kaduna State University, and celebrity Kim Il-kyung also faces plagiarism allegations. Except for Kim, all these figures actually ended up leaving the office to permanent resignation. So now let us look at the situation in Malaysia. 1999 to year 2009, 60% of Malaysian graduates, university graduates, admitted of some kind of plagiarism. However, looks like the remaining, a recent study in 2018 shows that 41% of Malaysians agree to have law enforcement and penalty against plagiarism. Why penalty? Why law enforcement? What is the significance of this? So we all go through this education cycle. Early childhood classroom, back at home, kindy, primary school, secondary school, colleges, and we go to university. Graduation allows us to exit the loop. If we work at factory, learning doesn't stop, of course, but the loop of formal education can end right there. With misconception or contamination of ideas, however, we will continue to contaminate early childhood education, and this proliferate to secondary school, primary school, colleges, and university. When misconceptions or dishonesty on academic misconduct or integrity is lacking in the university, so we produce, the higher education produces people who serve early childhood education, contaminate schools, colleges, and a vicious cycle of human capital that's contaminated, suggesting some truth in what a retired ghostwriter claimed as, of all fields, educators were the biggest cheaters. Of concern is that Barara and Asadullah in 2019 captured that graduate parents among Malaysians make up 28% of the flock. All right. However, in comparison to almost double the portion in Singapore and almost triple the portion amongst Koreans. So this worries us because with the plagiarism figure, the actual graduate parents who underwent integrity education was actually less than or equals to 10%, anti 10%. So what do? We have two choices: to allow plagiarism to proliferate, dominate the sector, or to take action and put a halt to the numbers. So by doing this, we are actually revisiting phase 1, laying foundation in the National Higher Education Strategic Plan. Although we are behind time, if action can be taken now, we can achieve excellence, glory, and sustainability by 2030. So this study aims to ascertain that plagiarism exists and define the extent of change that can happen when plagiarism is communicated with students. In doing so, we answer two specific questions. Question number 1, does plagiarism happen among the fresh students enrolled on the course? And to what extent does communication about plagiarism actually affect students' academic honesty from the way they handle their assignments? So the focus group of this study, first year Malaysian students. There were more students, but the ones who will be with us until 2024 would be 37 students. They are enrolled on Bachelor of Bioresource Technology. Most of them are from Peninsular Malaysia, aged 20 to 21 years. From social economic status, 30% of them are B40s. And they were monitored between September 2020 to June 2021. It is notable that these students enter USM with CGPA minimum of 2 in language aptitude, English language more than minimum 2. So to either as an eyeing strategy, HOTS or high order thinking tasks were assigned. In assignment 1, semester 1, students were to formulate their ideas and present in the form of video and script. WOPTP means they're supposed to come up with an answer, or how to come up with an answer. Or why orange pumpkin turns purple on the farm. This would act as baseline data on academic practices. While in assignment 2, students were to formulate ideas and put them on a poster. And this is actually the effect of briefing on plagiarism. In assignment 3, students were to formulate idea on one-page media review, which looks like that, more or less. And this is just as litmus test to see if academic honesty practice in assignment 2 is retained in assignment 3. Okay, to be fair, students were given resources to support their learning for online modules deposited at USM Open Learning Platform. Okay, one Open Learning platform and several ebooks, STI references, besides synchronous Webex lectures recorded for them and accessible. Okay, this study adopts mixed mode approach, qualitative, to screen or to detect or to identify the types of plagiarism that students commit. They can be 13 types: idea plagiarism, verbatim plagiarism, improper reference, mishandling of copyright materials, paraphrasing, mosaic, translation, accidental, auto-plagiarism, etc. So keep in mind with these 13 types, and next these are defined. So the granular detail of analysis done was, after receiving assignments, they are screened for plagiarism and the types are quantified. The same goes for assignment 2 and assignment 3. Bear in mind that assignment 1 came without any note on plagiarism, while assignment 2 has some instructions that students needs to do referencing in order to avoid plagiarism. So let me call that plagiarism briefing. And assignment 3 acts as a litmus test, just to see if students voluntarily practice healthy academic honesty in preventing plagiarism when presenting their assignments. Lastly, students' reasons for coming to university were captured to roughly understand how much it takes to educate them about academic integrity and plagiarism, and also to estimate the portion of students likely to participate in the fight against plagiarism. Okay, it turns out from WOPTP, why orange pumpkin turns purple, proposal on presented by students shows that students were unfamiliar with plagiarism. There are many forms of plagiarism. Okay, committed, basically type 1 to type 6 were captured. And this signals that the earlier education did not instill academic honesty sufficiently. And this also signals universities' role to enforce clear-cut guidelines and the section's priority role to groom students to understand the value of university education. As Professor Eric Tao of USA puts it, value of a university lies in the integrity it gives. Okay, after briefing on plagiarism, it turns out that in semester 2, in poster formulation, only 5% of students did not list in-text, not cite in-text references, and did not list the references. So the information presented was surface, and this actually defeated the purpose of high order taking skill as assigned to them. At the flip side, 95% went the extra mile researching, and this means a growing participation from 3% assignment 1 to 95% in assignment 2, which is also a positive indication of change in learning behavior. So we are going to zoom into the 95% of this. 14% unexpectedly beyond my expectation and guideline. They have presented skill referencing, while 57 has actually complied to the simple guideline on in-text referencing that I have outlined. The boom between 21% to 35% for listing regarding list as enough to avoid plagiarism means that there is still relevance. It has been engraved as habits among Asian students there. They believe the misconception that listing alone is enough to avoid plagiarism. However, as a person who has not yet stopped studying, I understand if students were disorganized with reference materials, insight citation can be very tedious. However, the positive development is the 21% in the assignment 1 reference listing contains fake references. The 35% reference listings are strictly references related to the facts they have cited in their assignments. Having said that, so the crux of this is the 21% transformation to 35%, although it looks bad, but it's a list of honest list of references. It's not just list. And that severity of plagiarism or disengagement in learning from 42% has reduced to 5%. Next, 0% compliance to the referencing guideline that is so simple. I only requested for in-text citation of references has increased to 57%. And this not only indicates obedience, but also academic honesty in presentation of ideas. Wonderful is to find out that from 0%, avoidance of plagiarism from the first assignment after briefing on plagiarism, 95% of students did something, took an action to avoid plagiarism. This reflects devotion and improvement in academic integrity. Overall, the numbers show, whether big or small, transformation of moral values. So what happens when the rules are lifted? This is what our litmus test. It's not beyond expectation. See that 3% of students, or actually one student, plagiarized. No list, no in-text citation. It's great to find out that a portion, that 22% presented fake list, while 31% upheld their belief that listing of references alone is enough to avoid being caught plagiarizing. Okay, so if we regard listing, plagiarizing, and fake lists as faded integrity, as a clear
Mr.
divide.
Ghazali, you have 2 more minutes.
Pardon?
You have 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay. All right, so the result of litmus test is acidic, not favorable. However, the good news is it took only talk on plagiarism, or maybe storytelling is enough to make students make the move. So I have identified 2 of the diamonds among the 14% and the 28%, and they are going to join the move to fight plagiarism in the course. Good news also, this is an evidence of good referencing system Okay, these are the popular votes. To my surprise, university has the role of educating students. Students actually come here to get good job and good life, to have survival skill, that's acceptable, but to be educated is not a popular reason. This raises two questions. Has willingness to learn degraded, or has higher institution force-faded trust from Malaysians as an education provider? So this study identified challenges for students who are totally unfamiliar that needs education. However, on the side of academicians, the fear of losing students and the intensity of the legal process when caught plagiarizing took the challenges. However, when students come to our arms, it means they deserve great education. They deserve to be educated and learn the right way of doing things. Otherwise, criminal mind grow. This is a video that I hope you can spend some time, click on the link and watch the video on how criminal mind grow if not caught and educated properly. I shall skip this slide. And 3 points from this that can be drawn from this study is that number one, brief yield honesty. The figures 14%, 7%, 28% compliances should be able to kickstart the fight against plagiarism, and communication about plagiarism should not stop here. Let us start the journey of university weaving values into the social fabric in line with what Ratan Tata says. If you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, walk together. That way we can remove the rug. I thank my boss for sharing the academic prerequisites to get entry into the Bachelor of Risk by Research Technology, and Dr. Arwani for contributing this, and all of you for staying on until here. Keep in touch, take care, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ghazali. Then we go for the O&A session. Any question for Dr. Ghazali?
Yeah, can I ask?
Okay, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
How would you address the situation that the students are not aware that they are plagiarizing? Because the reason that I teach research methods, and I realize that oftentimes it's not by intention. So how do you address the situation of prevention rather than catching up what they have done wrong?
That's very good.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anna. Actually, in a separate survey, a student were given a questionnaire, and they were asked to define what they understand about plagiarism. And you're right, and they misunderstood. Some in the final year thought that plagiarism is actually defined by turning in similarity index of more than 30%. Some have it that way. Okay, so it was a workshop. So the duty of the section academics is to introduce, to define plagiarism for students to understand, build the understanding. No punishment so far. I handle, for this study, we focus on first year students, and the preventive step is to educate, communicate about plagiarism. Yeah, so there won't be punishment, but there will be stricter like TSI similarity index guideline for fast screening of plagiarism in the second year, and more strict, perhaps 10% for the third year, the ones leaving the university. But we understand it was a misconception rather than an intentional dishonesty.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Any other question?
Thank you, Dr.
Let me ask this. We know that plagiarism is a serious academic dishonesty that affects the integrity and standard in human capital development. Has it been criminalized in your institution or country? That is one. And then what is the institutional response to plagiarism, either for students or staff in the university? So these are my two questions.
Yeah, Professor Abdullahi, actually it has been spelled out clearly in the law or rules. It is an act. The act is actually part of Malaysian law, but applied to university students. It is actually in our school. So far, there has been only isolated cases, publicized cases. I'm not aware of the details of the cases, but it was brought up to court, but not many. Like this year, there was once earlier of the year, one case involving academics rather than students plagiarizing. But also this year, academics being caught plagiarizing or not professional in student supervision. So it means that there is implementation. However, there could be more cases if more academics are not hesitant of reporting to the legal office. As for our students, we confine the actions to be just to educate and telling students the right way of avoiding plagiarism rather than to have the rule in full enforcement. But the law is in place and it is being enforced. But again, how far it goes to the court or only in a department or it stops at the dean depends on how severe the case is and the decisions of the layers of leaders, the head of department, and then the dean, and then legal office. Have I answered the question?
Yeah. Then what are the institutional responses? Because you said this is not a police affair, but to educate. So what other preventive measures are institutions taking to stop plagiarism?
Okay, well, I guess
Supposedly, you use Turnitin, right? Institution, you use Turnitin, or you have usually the institution will have the committee about research ethics committee. So when there is any cases about any types of ethics related to research, it would be sent to the committee to do the evaluation or the investigation. And that committee, usually they will involve the external members or something like that, right? Is that right? And and also the RBC, the ethical clearance procedure, and that is another thing, like people pay very much attention to it. Yeah, but different institutions, because the size, sometimes, I don't know, in Taiwan here, sometimes we just outsource. Like, for example, if the university doesn't have its own expert, then they will just outsource it from other governmental kind of a big subcontract out to other governmental units or other universities. How does it work at USM and in Malaysia though?
Yeah, it varies from one university to another. The law also vary from cases to cases. Normally, the first step, the first screening stage is to interview students, assess their knowledge, assess their intentionality. Okay, and if it is negligence, normally students are allowed to resubmit their assignment. It happened also this year at Queen's University, UK. The same procedure applies. However, in severe cases like repeated dishonesty, misconduct, then the case will be forwarded further to legal office. In USM, it is called legal office. The name can be Academic Integrity Unit at the universities, I suppose. All right, so they will do the investigations, like you said, maybe hire outsource for expert, look for plagiarism. We also have ethics committee to assess plagiarism even at department level, at school level. One with authority to run plagiarism would run plagiarism screening for every thesis that is submitted and report similarity index value. So there are different percentages of allowed similarity index, but that is the quantifiable, normally the paraphrasing and referencing problem. Okay, in this particular study that I have presented, the plagiarism detected was not detectable by Turnitin. So we did qualitative analysis by carefully reading students' assignments between the lines. And so the plagiarism types were detected, and it was quite obvious that, again, misconception, as described in literature, students only regard referencing as enough to avoid plagiarism, or a severe misconception of plagiarism. For instance, student copy-paste a paragraph, okay, and that leads to plagiarism type 3, improper referencing, besides copying verbatim, and also maybe copy wrongs or infringement of copyright, mishandling of copyrighted materials in the case of copying of figures or artworks of previous authors. So there is variation, and we have to trust that the legal office, the people doing the investigation, doing justice to both students and the institution. But in our department, mostly students are educated when caught plagiarizing, and they are given chance to resubmit the assignment. In exam, however, the case is different. At least in my 15 years service in USM, there were at least 2 cases being addressed to the legal office, and students were fined and suspended for 1 semester, for instance. So that's because of the severity of cheating in exam. But so far, for technical writing, we educate and give students second chance to submit their assignments. Have I answered your question, Dr. Anna?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Ghazali, thank you for the presentation. I think this is a very important area. We also have, writing workshops in our university before the student starts research, before they get into research. So, in writing workshops, they are told about the ethics and plagiarism and how to avoid all these kind of, so I think that's also something which has, helped recently. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the input, Dr. Garima.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question for Ghazali? Well, in the absence of any further questions, I think we have come to the end of this session. I want to thank you most sincerely for your time and for your participation. I want to particularly thank Professor Malik, Jasmeet, Kaur, Lean, and then who's the other presenter, for making this wonderful presentation. And then other participants who have participated in this session. I want to particularly thank Ahmad Shabuddin, who is the floor manager for this particular session. I was made to understand that there will be a group photograph at the end of the session.
Okay, thank you.
So we want to thank you most sincerely. My name is Professor Abdullahi Musa Ashafa. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor, Academic, Kaduna State University, Nigeria. My university is a co-organizer of this GHEF 2021 conference. So it is delightful to have you in this session. We want to thank you most sincerely as I hand over to Shabuddin. Shabuddin, over to you.
Thank you, Prof. Now is a group photo session. Hope everyone can turn on your camera and give a big smile. Okay, so is it ready? Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ahmad, thank you. See you next
Thank
time.
you.
Okay. Bye-bye. Hope to see you.
Thank you, Professor Ashafa. Thank you, Ahmad.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
God bless you all.
Thank you. Nice seeing you,
Bye-bye.
Professor Lin. Thank you, Jasmeet.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.
This
Thank you.
August for the summit, GHEF summit. This
Thank you.
coming
Yeah.
August.
Okay. Kindly share the picture.
Sure, I will share with you.
Thank you.
Okay, through WhatsApp. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Bye. Assalamualaikum.
Bye bye.